What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We are a group of guys helping each other make progress towards each other's goals. If you're new to the channel, awesome and welcome. If you want to help support the channel and join our pro team, head over to rhomasteam.com/pro, where you can contribute to us on a donation basis. We also give you access to exclusive content, mastermind groups, etc., etc. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the team.
Rhomas Men's Team, we are back. Our mission is pretty simple. Help us men make progress on our goals. It's a circle, not a triangle. Mr. Ray, what's going on, brother?
Hello, Wes. As you know, the best way to make progress on your goals is to have strong daily habits, which include our scorecard. That is getting 8 hours sleep, weighing yourself, which is just one metric of health, not the only one. Drinking a half gallon of water, sending an act of love message, reviewing your goals either in the form of a list or your vision board, doing a 5-minute learning segment, 5-minute journaling segment, doing 10 minutes of movement and 10 minutes of meditation. When I can get all that done in a day, Wes, especially at the beginning of the day, it moves me along my goal hunt.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. Yeah, we recently discussed not only having a personal scorecard, but a business scorecard for our wealth management the podcast and team, and I'm trying to put that together. But outstanding, yeah, dude. The more I stick to the scorecard, actually,
the less sick you'll sound, Wes.
Yeah, dude, I swear I've been sick for literally 2 months, like on and off. It's been crazy, but it's my own fault. Focusing too much on making financial progress and not human progress. So, but it is what it is. Arjuna, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Hey, good morning. Is my mic on?
It is on, sir. Classic pink robe, as always. We always appreciate it. Absolutely love it, man.
I'm on the west side, so it's a little earlier. I'm in my cozy gear.
Yep. Where, if you don't mind me asking, where are you at?
I'm up in Portland.
Of course you are.
So I wanted to bring up the idea. We talked probably a couple weeks ago now, about storytelling, your origin story, etc. I found it to be pretty interesting in that same podcast that I was listening to. They talked about not just having your origin story, but they said handful of core stories. Like what are the handful of core stories that you for sure have in your life that if you spent, a couple hours and sat down and really articulated them, that if you were to do that, you would teach you more about yourself than you've probably ever learned. But then you'd also have those core stories to teach others. And the idea is, what 5 stories could you tell me where I would know basically everything about you? And I thought that was really interesting. So I wanted to go around, and I know I'm putting you guys on the spot here, but are there any stories that come to mind for you that could teach me about you in a very efficient way? Ray, because I like putting you on the spot, does anything come to mind for you?
Yeah, a couple of stories come to mind. They're all work related. Selling art to Drake was a core story. I had that selfie with him when he came into the gallery in Boston Art. And so that is a great selling tool and just a kind of great marketing tool. But it's funny, I talk about how he was such a gentleman. Like anytime I'd say this art is no good, he wouldn't say anything bad. He would just say that's interesting. Anytime I said this is really good, he'd get excited. So very careful about his public kind of persona. And as he was so when he came in, I jumped up and I said, "Hello, Mr. Drake." And I grabbed it and shook his hand to claim him as a client, right? And then as he was leaving, I tried to do a cool Mac Daddy handshake with him. And like I ended up just like imagine picking up a dead goldfish and putting it in someone's hand. Like that's the kind of like that is like that's what I did. And I just looked up and I was just kind of screaming inside. Just like, ah, what did I do, Mr. Drake? But then he graciously gave me another opportunity uh, as he was leaving to give me for a handshake so we could be slapping friends. Working it. So that was a kind of like a kind of peak career moment. And then working as a waiter is a less glamorous job, but that really was the best sales training I ever had because it was like I was able to learn how to read people. Do they want a like invisible robot who'll deliver the services, or do they want to be entertained? You know. And then my favorite job of all time was being a dishwasher. For some reason, I just loved the automation of it. And then like the mind could soar and I could actually get the job done at the same time. And in retrospect, the best part of that was no email. So those are three kind of core stories about me that are just they're about work, but they're more about me and my personality and how I'm engaging when I want to be and disarmed when I want to be. How's that for like off the dome, three core stories, Wes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would imagine I would also guess of, okay, you got married, you had a child, right? These handful of stories where I could tell the inflection points. Okay, you started off as a waiter, like kind of like taking your lumps, like you started from the bottom, right? And now you served Drake. Now you're at the top, sort of deal.
Now we hear you.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not going to do the line. Yeah, I'm not going to do the line. So you can kind of see the arc of Ray's history. And I would challenge you.
Is part of the core stories format is select the key like moments / inflection points in your life and use storytelling to describe them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and really getting into the detail. And then, as a lot of us know, storytelling, I mean, that curriculum is vast. Like really going into detail and then trying to transcribe and transfer the emotion that you were feeling during those times and delivering them to somebody else. Right. And that could matter for sales. It could matter for human relationship developments. It could matter for almost like psychotherapy on yourself. Like Jordan Peterson was talking about that oftentimes what he has found is that trauma that still has residue today, from my understanding, is directly correlated with one's lack of going back through their story and figuring out the details. Right, like that the circumference of the fear is still taking up too much surface area because you haven't gone back and like lived it and like almost like put it to rest, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So like, Wes, what comes to mind for me is like that part of my, bundle of, good qualities and bad qualities or like phobias or insecurities is that like I really want to be perceived as rich, successful, perfect marriage, like well-balanced personality, like all this, like I guess it's either a contrast to the chaos of my upbringing or just like a pathological need to be accepted, right? And so what I work on sometimes these days is just like being a loser, and like this isn't the right language necessarily, but like going out into the world, like not having a fancy car. And we've talked about this. It's been a couple of years, I think, since we talked about this, Wes. But like, like for the last 20 years, I've been driving Mercedes, and it like if I was living honestly, there would be a bumper sticker that said, lease payments made by my mother-in-law. And and so like having a Toyota Prius for the last couple of years was a nice change because like I wasn't putting on this mask of like having the perfect life. I was able to drive what one of my colleagues called a real dad mobile, right? Look at that. I just gave you another core story, Wes.
Without a doubt.
Being a father is like, to my daughter Thea, is just like the source of endless joy. It's just like my favorite thing in the whole world.
Yeah, let's do this. Logan, if you're down for it, hey, first of all, welcome up, brother. I think it's the first time you've ever been on stage here. Quick disclaimer, I would love for you to be as vulnerable and teach the group whatever you want to teach. Obviously, just know that this is on the internet, posted on YouTube, etc. We can always delete it if you feel you've overshared, etc. But I just want to be, make sure you're comfortable, brother. But anyway, welcome to the team, and would love for you to play along with the topic here of your own personal storytelling. Is there anything that you could share with the group of saying, hey guys, new to the team, here's my story that could tell you disproportionately about me, rather than just say, some sort of generic, right? Like, hey, I'm Logan, nice to meet you guys, sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, my name's Logan. What's going on?
Excellent audio quality too, by the way, right out of the gate.
Microphones.
Nice. You got to teach Ray. Yeah. Send Ray an email. Yeah,
it's the way, my friend. But I think that for me, story wise, like I it was dumb, but when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a writer. It's just like I kind of wrote, and that for me was a really important thing. And actually, it's funny how much old Jordan Peterson comes up, in these conversation, just because it's like the narrative analysis of stuff. So it's like I studied psychology in school and it was actually like young, and it's just like, that's my fucking dude. But no, it's interesting. I think for me, when I think about like the narrative of my life, there's a couple of key stories that I look at where, I think for me, the first 5 years out of college, I fucking just ate a bag of dicks, just went the wrong path. And it was this thing that was like, that fucked me. And then I made a switch right around like 28. And then for me, it was like a crazy, I had kind of like a not great, but stable job. And then what happened is it was just killing me. So I was like, I can't stay here. And then a bunch of stuff happened in my life. It's like one of my friends committed suicide. All the things that I was kind of using at that time to like stabilize fell away. And I just had to like be like, oh God, this sucks. My life sucks. And then what ended up happening is I got fired from that mediocre but shitty job. And I was thinking about being a cop. And I was like, oh God, that's something. They'll take anybody. And then they were like, you got glasses, stupid. You can't be a cop. And I was just like, what the fuck? So it was like everything closed off. And then I ended up getting a job as a bartender where I absolutely, as it turned out, I'm like hyper extroverted. So that for me was that moment where that clicked in. It's like, I'm pretty good at fucking like talking to people and getting people to buy shit. And then that kind of influenced a path I went later. But yeah, there was this really very odd period where it was like everything, I was holding off this flood, and then I cracked and it just knocked me off my feet. And it took me about 3 years to get back up from that. But I think in that 3 years, one of the things that I found was that like you get this stupid, like, I think I'm going to be a cop. And that leads to maybe I'll be a journalist, which led to, I think I'm going to join a cult, which led to, I think I'm going to join a couple of cults and live in them. And, and it was crazy. But then it's that thing where it's like, I came out. And I think for me, that was the thing that was really interesting, where it was like, I found that for my life, you fuck up, everybody fucks up. It's fine. Don't kill yourself. You know what I mean? Like, it's that thing where it's just like, you can fix it, and it is a journey, and you're going to fuck up. So it's that thing where it's like, for me, it was, I think in terms of the story of my life, like that's one that I think about, where it's just like kind of weird and crazy, and yeah, but it seemed to be pretty pivotal for me. So yeah, I don't know.
See, that's a heck of a this story, is fascinating. No, this is what's fascinating, because if you zoom in on this, like I am literally just meeting Logan for the first time.
Yeah.
Now, imagine that if we're just randomly meeting out on the street, how quickly we just got to that core, like the core of that man, right? Just by saying, "Hey, what's the core story, bro?" Versus like, "Hey, man, how's the weather?" Like it's awesome. Inside of 30 seconds, now I'm fascinated. And Logan, if you don't mind, did you literally join multiple cults?
Yeah.
And if you don't mind sharing, like what was that like?
So basically see, and it's one of these things, like I love a little group of people being like, here's our feelings, because it can go one of two ways, and one of them's pretty good, the other way maybe not so. No, it's interesting. It's just like the first one is I'm from San Francisco, and I joined this group called the SFBICC, and what they were is there was this organization run by this guy called Kip McKean, who's just he basically, I think he came out of Florida or something, but right around the time the Moonies were coming up, kind of back in the day, there was a counter, like organic, like we need to have like a Christian fundamentalist framework that can align with like the Moonies. I don't know if you know who the Moonies are. They're technically one of the most successful cultish organizations ever. But what ended up happening is he started this thing. It's like the Crossroads movement or something. But then what happened is it exploded. So in the 80s, that comes up and he's just like, sick. We're getting all these people. And then what ended up happening is it got really successful, and then they turned on him and kicked him out. So he started this other one, which was the ICC. And then what happened is that started spanning out actually from Portland. So they started at Portland State.
Nice.
I joined their San Francisco church. And I was in San Francisco, and I was just completely lost in my life. And I was just like, fuck it, I can't be a cop. They're like, maybe try investigating shit. And I was like, I do kind of really secretly like that a lot. And then that put me on this really weird path where it's like I was kind of broke because I lost my job. But then it was just like, you can get a place to live if you go hang out with these guys. So it's like I was paying $300 a month to live in a house in San Francisco with like 8 other dudes. But it's just like, you're living, you know? And then what ended up happening is I stayed with them for about 9 months, and I was like writing all this shit. I was like documenting everything like a fucking psychopath. And then I ended up, I was like, all right, guys, I got a job opportunity up in Portland. And then went with that church up to Portland. And then I lived there for like 2 months, and then I made a jump to where I am now. So it's just a thing. Yeah, and then I'm in Seattle, and it's just like I found there's a bunch of fucking creepy people up here. There was another group that was like this lady who, oh yeah, dude, let me tell you, I'll spin you a yarn, my friend. But yeah, it's interesting, and it's just like I think it's that thing where like you got a weird little voice, and sometimes you follow it, and I guess it seems like that works out. So we'll see. But
and do you mind if I ask you, Logan, what are you doing now?
So I'm actually a sales guy. I work at a big fancy sales technology place. So probably shouldn't say that on the internet, but yeah. Or if you want to delete that part, I'll tell you. If you could delete this part, I'll tell you. But like,
is that cool?
Don't tell us I can tell you're in sales, man. Like you are a master storyteller, dude. Master storyteller.
That's a lot, man. That's very kind. I appreciate that. But maybe just a nonsense rambler is how I've conceptualized.
No, again, like we said, like inside of a couple minutes, we can learn more about you than probably, if I were to guess, even some of your close friends don't know. That's my guess. I think as what I have noticed is men, we tend to live around each other rather than with each other because we don't share certain things. So you're just kind of like are orbiting around each other rather than actually having like an authentic relationship.
Wes,
so what I hear in your story, man.
What I love about this format is how we can find the similarities, like even though I've never traveled with a cult up the west coast of the U.S., I'm also a seeker. I'm on a similar journey for the last 3 years, trying to connect with my destiny. And so, Wes, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make that point that like the conversation, the context you've set up for us here, Wes, is that we're allowed to find similarities instead of automatically put up walls because of the differences. What do you hear in Logan's story, Wes?
Yeah, I mean, Logan, let me know where I need to edit this, but and also how relatable it is. I mean, what guy has not gone through a significant phase of their life up until that point, feeling they've wasted it? Okay, hey, I'm X age, I'm 25, I'm 27, I'm 28, I'm 30, I'm 50, I'm 60, whatever the number is, I've wasted it. Okay, now I have a certain call to action. I need to stop being, a piece of shit. How do I turn this thing around? And then, yeah, the inevitable multiple / many failed attempts of trying to restart your life. And then, yeah, 100%. And then feeling like, okay, I need to find a team. My biology is telling me I need to be a part of a team, but it's really easy to get caught up in like almost a team taking advantage of you, and you not real, and almost, if you don't mind me saying this, almost a willfully a willful reduction in obligation to produce more, like almost depending too much on the team rather than like, hey, here's what I bring and I'm going to equally bring up like the mechanism myself. And then, yeah, like trying different teams, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally finding a path. And then knowing that it's not going to be too long from today where this is part of the path, where inevitably you're going to reach another fork in the road. And this is just yet another lily pad that you leaped from. So, man, I think it was awesome, but thank you for sharing that, brother. I really appreciate it.
Word. Appreciate
it. Donovan, I know that might be a hard act to follow. If you're up for it, brother, I think this is the first time we're having you on stage here, man. Would love to hear one of your core stories as an introduction to the team here, brother.
Yeah, happy to do so. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, man. And welcome, dude.
Thank you, Logan, for sharing. I'm also curious to hear. I've been around for a minute, since back in the day when Matt used to join in more frequently.
Yep.
Since 2021, I believe. But yeah.
And just so I don't look like an idiot, this is the first time we're having you on stage, right?
No. I did speak once with Matt. At that time, I had dislocated my shoulder working for a solar company, and as I was crawling around their attic looking just doing the survey, and Matt made a joke. He's like, "Oh yeah, what else were you doing up there in the attic?" I remember that caught me, but yeah, you could say this is the first time in a long time. Might as well be the first. I'm curious about your story, one of your origin stories, Wes, as well. I don't know if we'll be able to get that, but that'd be cool to hear. But yeah, I'll start off. Mine's very similar to Logan's. And, I was the first kid in my family to get a scholarship and go to college. And I got accepted to go to the University of Biomedical Engineering, and come from a very poor family. We really didn't have much. And so everything that I did had to kind of find a way and to figure it out and try to make a path that would lead me to that kind of success or the kind of future that I want. And so the University of Utah, they offered me a $15,000 scholarship. And then with the student loans of $7,000, I could afford to go and pursue this career opportunity. And I went in person, did all the financial information, everything. I figured if I did like the hard copy and I turned it in person, it'd be the most secure. Well, the person I handed over my paper to ended up misplacing it. I lost my scholarships. I could no longer afford to go to college. So, I was lost at that time. I got really depressed. I got really suicidal. I ended up figuring out how to finish off the first semester, and then I dropped out. And yeah, that was a really challenging point in my life, but ultimately it pushed me in a direction where I pursued self-education and alternative education. And I, after that point, I really lost faith in that aspect of our society. Because for me, when I was younger, I was led to believe you go through school, you do all these things, you do the right things, and this is what you're going to get. You're going to get rewarded, and it's going to work out. And it just didn't for me. So, but yeah. And then I started working with my uncle as an apprentice. He was a handyman for a very long time. He worked as a firefighter for a while, and So he would work with clients up in Park City, Utah, building custom furniture, doing cabinetry, rebuilding kitchens, bathrooms, etc. So I worked with him for about 7 years doing all that. And then right around the time the pandemic hit, I decided to transition my career into something more serious as work slowed down. And the income became a little bit more unsteady there. And I applied to work at Tesla, and that's where I've been at for the past 4 years. Slowly worked my way up from the ground floor to then being the manager on the solar side, specifically working with utilities for interconnection. But then again, this just at the beginning of March, my role was actually eliminated, so I got laid off. So now I'm kind of in between trying to figure out what the next move is for me. But yeah, I guess another core story is that my dad left our family when I was really young. So I was raised by a single mom. Had an older brother and a little sister and a couple other little brothers from my dad. But I didn't really get to see them much because he wasn't around too much when I was younger. And yeah, my older brother, he wasn't very responsible. He wasn't much of an older brother. So I ended up filling in the shoes of like, who's going to be the man of the house now? Who's going to make sure that everything's okay and everything's taken care of? Just kind of seemed to fall on my shoulders. But yeah, I don't know if that is exactly what you're asking for, but
absolutely
it is.
100%, man. Do you mind if sorry, my iOS still, I got to turn this freaking like automatic, like whatever these on-screen emoji things are. Do you mind if I comment on a few things, bud?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So the way that I hear some of the story, which, if you know anything about my kind of background, you know that I could 100% relate to some of the stuff that you were saying. Father leaving at an early age, being raised by a single mom, etc. Also, that realization, I think, is in a lot of our stories, right? Is like realizing that nobody's coming to save you. At some point, you realize like the system that you're trusted in that was supposed to like lead to like greener pastures is oftentimes built on weak scaffolding at best, to the point where you drop off your application, it just gets lost somewhere, and now your entire future is now off a handful of degrees in a completely different direction. I would also, what I hear in your story is that kind of struggle, which you were dealt those cards at an early age with your father leaving, in my view, builds, maybe at an accelerated rate in a good way, a sense of personal agency that honestly, man, I hear some grown men today that, that are twice your age, that do not have personal agency, that as soon as they have a problem, they're calling everybody else, expecting them to solve their stuff, versus your story forces you through, what do they say, like the eye of the needle, to like make sure that you are able to have the skill yourself. And again, you're going through it too, right? Like it seems like just ended another chapter of your story. So now it's just a question of like, how much muscle have you built from all of that history, and what are you going to do with it? I also noticed another thing. You said you got accepted to school for engineering, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, this is obviously a super generalized comment, but like, you're not interested in engineering or getting accepted for engineering if you're not somewhat of an intellectual person who understands how, like at least mathematics work. I have found that those people who are naturally gifted like that, it's just a matter of time until like their intellect like breaks through the membrane that's holding them back currently. Do you know what I mean? Right? Like almost, what comes to mind, like the, was it Good Will Hunting? It's like you're not going to be able to hold that guy back for long, right? Like if you view him now and he's just, air quotes, just a janitor or just like a busboy somewhere, at some point he gets discovered for like his natural gifts and so on. But let me ask you a question, man. Is, because I can relate to this, is not having a father around, is that one of like, is that like the cornerstone or perhaps one of like fundamental pillars of your identity and the strength that you've built so far as a man? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd say maybe. I one thing for sure that happened is right around after I graduated high school, I realized that they're being bitter about that whole experience wasn't going to serve me well. And so I just tried to look at the positives that, what positives did this bring into my life? And that sense of agency that you were getting at, that definitely was one of the things I'm very grateful for. And I'm also very grateful that, it's made me realize the kind of man that I don't want to be.
Right. 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Very, very common. I mean, hey, man, it's funny. The interesting dynamic of my girlfriend has a son, he's 9 years old. So I get to experience what it's like to teach a younger male more frequently. And honestly, like, there's part of me that's, I don't want to say sad, but maybe that of like, oh shit, like this is kind of the first time I'm being present of like what I missed out on. Like some like these little nuances where I can help pause and say, hey man, I know you feel this way right now. It's okay to feel sad. Don't turn that into anger because that's going to have these downstream effects. Like I never got those conversations. And honestly, like it's kind of feels weird for me to even say this. For the first time in my life, I feel sad about not having that figure around. Do you know what I mean? Which is really interesting. So I don't know if have you experienced that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And, the reason why I wanted to pursue biomedical engineering in the first place is because I have people in my family that are paraplegic and they can't walk anymore. And I grew up around them as a little kid. And so I wanted to pursue that career because I thought it would lead me to a point where I'd be able to help people that can't do something do that again. And we're seeing that now in technology like Neuralink. And so now I'm living in as an adult, watching other people do and achieve the dreams that I wanted to do as a child, and I'm just not there. And so it's very hurtful. But what I've found is it's healthier for me to channel that into a new dream of like, I struggled. I went through a lot of challenges because of my past. It is what it is. But, now I could build myself up as a role model, and I could be that role model for other people out there in the world and help guide them in a way that I didn't get to receive. And so kind of like a little bit like that, I realized like I didn't have that, but it's something that I can provide other people, even if they're not my own kid,
That's an awesome outlook, Don. What comes to mind for me is like the way addiction is kind of like was a curse in my family and something that was normalized from birth, right? And now that I don't drink or use drugs anymore, like I have another 60 years on this planet to do the right thing. You don't even have to use that language, or like kind of like model the kind of behavior that maybe I should have been modeled for me, right? And so again, because Wes, thank you for creating the context where we can look for similarities. Don clearly eclipses me intellectually with using big words like biomechanical engineering and everything. But something else that comes to a couple of other things that come to mind, Don, is that like the world is such a you were sold this bill of goods that if you study hard, you'll have a stable life, right? And like they don't teach us about the chaos of the world, right? How all of that can be taken away, or you can even do all that and you still don't get the benefits that were promised or the outcomes that were promised. But the other side of that is like the world is also beautifully chaotic, right? Where like the world is awash with opportunity. And if you fail at something or the rug gets pulled out from under your feet in some area, the world is awash with opportunities, and your story proves that. So a very impressive young man right there, Wes, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and Donovan, you don't mind me saying this, I would be curious, what is the next step for you, and in particular for your career? Because my view is it is a gift for a man to develop a craft and be a craftsman at his craft. I do think oftentimes we shy away from what we're really called towards because of whatever reason, because of monetary pressures, because of social pressures, et cetera. If you don't mind me asking, if money did not exist and you knew for sure that addition is usually about subtraction. So to make progress, you often just have to remove the barriers, and they're oftentimes emotional barriers, usually that are stemmed from fear. It's a fear and judgment, etc. If you don't mind me putting you on the spot, what would you do if you literally could pick, but you knew you had to provide maximum value back to society?
Yeah,
that's that small question. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Ray, for the compliments. I really appreciate that. It's very kind of you. I think I would just keep doing what I'm doing now, which is just focusing on developing my skill set around being a leader and and the whole reason why I decided to shift my focus to put myself in that sort of position or skill set, because I think it's something you could apply to anything. And I'm I'm the kind of person that just gets excited and interested in almost anything that comes my way. And so if I'm not careful, I could jump into things too deeply. So because I know that like marketing, sales, and being a strong role model and a leader for those who need it are highly adaptable, and they could be applied to every aspect of your life, including being a father. I think those are the most valuable things to me right now. So those are the skills I'm working on building up the most. And then, as far as how I'm going to apply those skills, that's something I've been going back and forth on. I'm currently in a relationship with a lovely woman, and she's pursuing therapy, psychology. She's a CSW, working on getting her licensure. And we've talked about building businesses together. I've had a few ideas of businesses I've wanted to make. Obviously, I have a little bit of a construction background. One thing I've been passionate about is making furniture, and so I thought about getting into contracting. I don't know if that's really the right option yet, but I'm fortunate enough that over the past 4 years, I've managed to save up a little bit of money, and I received a severance when I left the company. So now I do kind of have a little bit of a cushion where I'm trying to rethink, all right, similar to what you said, Wes, like I am now leaving another stage in my life for a new one. And what is that going to be? I don't necessarily know yet. But yeah, just continuing to focus on honing the skills that I've developed while I was working at Tesla. Honestly, was an incredible experience being there, and I learned a lot. So I'm very grateful for the time I had there, and I definitely don't have any bitter feelings towards them whatsoever. But yeah, finding ways that I could use the skills I've acquired in my life to help benefit those around me, I think resonates with me the most. It makes me feel the best. But yeah, I don't know.
I love it, man. Absolutely. I would throw one other thing out there for you to chew on, and because I've been kind of thinking about this, like almost over-indexing a little too much on my career, not sharing maybe some of the life lessons with younger versions of myself. So for instance, like as an example, thinking about like going back to like, what do they call, like the Boys Club of America? Like there are these clubs that like will help, it feels to me like, young men who maybe don't have the parental leadership around them and so on. It's like, why haven't I done that? So when you talk about leading and serving and helping others around you, I think there's a big gap in my life that I'm currently not doing because I'm solely focused on career. So somehow in your story, I'm picking up on maybe that's the next thing that I should be considering doing. But hey, man, thank you so much for sharing, brother. And just so you know, I'll leave you on if you want to keep commenting on everybody else's stories, but don't feel pressure like you got to sit here as well. Arjuna, let's throw the ball over to you, brother. Would you mind sharing maybe one of your core stories? I know you've shared with us in the past. What are one of your core stories? Is if we've never met and you wanted to teach us about you in whatever dimension you wanted to. You're up, buddy.
Hey, I'm sorry. Can I interject here real quick? I just wanted to say that, Wes, I think you're selling yourself a little bit short. Since I've been a part of this group, starting in 2020, you've been an incredible wealth and an incredible resource and a wealth of knowledge for me. I've learned so much from you, and honestly, I don't think I would be where I'm at today in my career if it wasn't for you.
Yeah, Don, you're right, man. Wes, you dummy. There are dozens of men who you mentor like on a biweekly basis. So like, you're wrong if you say there is a void in your schedule where you should be giving back. You give back a plenty. You want to give back more? Great. But just so you know, none of us are buying it that you don't give back at all. Am I right, Don?
You're right, and that's it for
Well,
me.
hey,
Yeah,
no, dude, seriously.
Let's stop humping Wes's leg. Arjuna,
Yeah.
tell us some of your core stories. And Arjuna, I'll challenge you because, you gave us you gave us the horror stories or like the very difficult kind of passages you had to go through, and I want to hear also some of the obviously those have shaped you into a very empathetic, compassionate, and kind of like wise person. That's what I get from you in the conversations we've had so far. But give us some of the core stories that maybe wouldn't scare the shit out of us.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm glad.
Hold on.
Sure, go ahead, Wes.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I wouldn't scare the show. That's so funny. Just wanted to say, hey, Donovan, I really do appreciate what you said, man, and Ray and Arjuna and Ryan. So sincerely, like, I know how hard it is for a man to compliment another man because society, right, like often gets weird about that. But I really do sincerely appreciate you. Honestly, you guys made me tear up a little bit, sincerely. So thank you, man, because that helps give me confidence of like, hey, some of this stuff is helping and working. So I really do appreciate it, guys. Thank you. But Arjuna, please, I'll send the ball back over to you. Please.
Sorry, we're all out of time. Arjuna, you're going to have to wait till next week.
Well, no, before to even not even get into my own shit real quick, I wanted to say appreciate that interjection, Donovan, because it was so necessary. And Wes, I appreciate that your ability to humbly receive in a group setting, because oftentimes oftentimes people push that away. So to like just to be getting it so hard and to be like, oh, I'm tearing up right now. That's admirable in its own right.
Yeah, thank you, dude.
Anyways,
machine gunned his ass with love, man. We just machine gunned you with love, Wes.
It's never ending.
Yeah,
no, Ray, I appreciate you saying what you said too, because like that's no problem. I know the stuff I saying sounds overwhelming and scary, but it's all completely interconnected to the fact that I found my passions and my cup is so full because I had to go through that stuff. So anyways, yeah, a part of that regarding is, so I get out of jail and I'm like, okay, I'm having healthy relationships for the first time. I do all this therapy, all this counseling, whatever. I face the beast as much as I can. And there was two things that I told myself going through it is I wasn't going to resent anyone for the choices they make as a result of what I've done. And I wasn't going to pity myself. And so no matter what things look like. And so anyways, I'm getting this job and I'm making friends with these coworkers and what have you. But then the kicker is that the Willamette Week or one of the local Portland news reports, they did a report on my thing. So if you Google my name, the worst part of me pops up immediately. Like that was a really hard thing to like deal with.
Be publicly shamed like that, right?
That was like I told myself from the very beginning I wasn't going to pity myself, but that was the hardest part. Like, why would they choose this one case? Why now this thing's looming over my head? Like anyone can just judge me and ostracize me immediately without any, anyways.
Context.
So yeah, so I'm getting to know all these people and what have you, and then so I'm gonna be like, I was going to like be in kind of more of a relationship. I was going to like hook up with one of my coworkers, but what they said in counseling was that if you're going to have any sort of sexual experience with someone, you need to let them know about your past, because even if everything's all on the up and up, if you have a history of a past of like anything negative sexually, even if you're the one being honest, if they don't know about it and then something happens and they find out, they can throw accusations at you and you can get in a lot of trouble. So as I'm getting closer with this coworker, I inevitably have to tell her about this stuff. Anyways, so I go by working for like a year with these people, and then somehow she ends up telling everyone, and then essentially the owner and the manager, they pretty much called me and were like, "Hey, you want to meet at this park?" And then like the owner was like, "Hey, listen, man, like I don't know how to tell you this, but like it's fucked up. Obviously, I know about all your stuff. I'm an owner of a business. I pride myself in giving people other chances and like people who are trying to better themselves. But like more than half the crew is gonna quit. They found out about your stuff. Like legally, you're in the right. You don't have to leave because you've done nothing wrong. And morally, like you're in the right. Like fuck them. I'm disgusted in all of them. Like it was this really emotional thing. And so I told myself, I was like, you know what? Like I'm gonna like I don't want you to have to rehire half your crew. I'll go. And it was really, really hard for me to not resent these people because like I mean I was hanging out with them for a year and a half. I'm like, these are my first real healthy relationships. And then to just get rejected by like my first crew of healthy people all simultaneously was like it fucking broke my heart. Anyway, so to segue into the positive, yeah, horror stories.
Well, then,
So what,
stop right there. Stop right there, Juno. I think that's fascinating because, like, and for those who haven't heard your story before, basically, I think like one way to put it is that, like, speaking of cults, you were like born into a cult where there was a lot of sexual abuse and like, so like a really bad behavior was modeled for you, and that led to you making bad choices.
yeah,
And we're not talking Bill Cosby level, but like
no, voyeurism, specifically
right,
So
right.
there was
Yeah.
like physical
And
or
so, right. And so, but that haunts you like with the online kind of like the public shaming and like the when people Google your name. That's something that my family went through. We took care of an elderly person who was wealthy, and then like then we were accused of elder abuse, right? And so, so with my wife and mother-in-law, if you Google them, like elder abuse can come up, and like it was like newspaper articles and everything, and it was really so. Like again, like this isn't a horror story because I am identifying with you. I am like there are similarities in your journey to my journey, and so yeah, that doesn't come close to the horror stories you shared with us 3 weeks ago. But put a smile on our face and give us because like because you're not a monster, right? Like
no.
you're an amazing you are like this amazing, wise, like spiritually kind of like enlightened person. And so why don't you give me a horror story that highlights that?
Well, I was
Because
gonna,
like
I was just about
you
to,
can't
I
really
was just
describe
about to
yourself
say,
as that at a dinner party, right? But like, give us a core story that like that illuminates that.
looks like Wes has got something to say.
Yeah, real quick, Arjuna, I'm going to write it down. You had an amazing line. What was it? It was like, I decided to not resent people who felt a certain way about what I did. What was that line? It was outstanding.
Yeah, it was two things. Like, I appreciate you repointing that out because it's literally like my proudest life thing of my shadow work is like, yeah, to not resent anyone else for how they responded towards me not facing this. Because I'm the one who let it get out of control. So if people felt betrayed or lost their trust as a result of me, because I was still this spiritual person. So imagine how much it impacted the people close to me when this happened. And so, yeah, to not resent them, but then also not to pity myself, to be like, well, like not to be, what's the word, masochistic and be like, you fucking deserve this, but be like, I'm not going to be like, oh, poor me. Like every bit of the sword that I have to fall on, I'm going to fall on as necessary to like, yeah.
Yeah, and
that line is outstanding. That concept is really an outstanding concept.
We talk about resentments in 12-step recovery all the time, where like resentments are toxic, right? Wayne Dyer says there are no justified resentments or justifiable resentments, right? Because when you have a resentment, you are the victim, right? You wear the big victim hat. I'm a victim, right? Arjuna, like what you're talking about is you decided that you weren't going to be either a victim to your past behavior or a victim if other people are turned off by your story?
Not even turned off. I mean, I'm talking like my closest friends. I'm in jail, and I'm being like, "Hey, don't trust this guy. He's a monster." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "Okay, I accept that that's their response because I'm the one who put them in this situation."
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Mm-hmm. All right, there's still time for you to cheer us up, man. Go.
Quick segue. Yeah. So literally that day when that happens, I make the transition. I'm like, okay, I actually have a couple months worth of rent. I'm going to just do what I've always wanted to do. I'm going to literally create structure and exercise and write and read. And I literally just did this like what we're doing here. And then that's when weirdly I like found parkour, fell so deeply in love with it. And now it's like, parkour is literally just like divine play. I get to be out. I am so wildly successful because I don't even need anything to be completely fulfilled. And that was a result of all that space being made, not pitting myself, creating that structure. And like, then these other things came in, relationships, everything just opened up so intensely. I got this construction job. I was getting paid insane amounts of money. And it was all a result of like letting that go and being like, it's okay that this happened. What's the space that I can make? What can come into my life from there? And that was the pivotal like experience.
Outstanding.
Like that life isn't over. Like that, right. Like, and Arjuna, like you, like there have been multiple moments in your journey where like I can imagine myself saying, I'm finished, it's over. Like, or like I'm going to kill myself because like I can't go on, you know? And you're just very impressive, man. Like you're a survivor and a thriver. And yeah, just very impressed, dude. Bravo.
Well, thank you.
Without a doubt, man. Yeah, absolutely. Phil, let's throw the ball over to you, brother. To whatever degree you want to share or comment on somebody else's sharing, you're up to bat, buddy. If you're cool with it.
I'm just sort of still unclear on what exactly the question is. Sorry.
Yeah, the initial prompt was, hey, we all have our core stories. There's probably a handful of stories that could explain 97% of our being to another stranger, let's just say. So number one, do you want to share any of those core stories, or you feel free to comment on any of the stories that have already been shared?
I don't know. I mean, I guess the main thing like contributing to my like the narrative I have for myself is just that I've pretty much just never had any kind of a normal life in any ways, really. My parents were fucking terrible. Didn't have a ton of friends as a kid, and just had a really kind of like isolated and like fucked up childhood where I only had like one or two friends, and they were, you know, always kind of shitheads like I was. So I don't really know what else. I don't know what to say about it. I don't want to just ramble about my childhood, but I've just never felt really good about myself or anything, and it's just very, very isolating because I mean, I'm definitely like extremely like overwhelmingly resentful towards my parents and my childhood and my life so far and everything. And it's very hard to deal with in any way because like, you know, I didn't have like the worst childhood ever. I wasn't like, you know, it was just like pretty bad. It wasn't like crazy bad or anything. So I kind of feel like I'm not even necessarily being honest about how bad it is. Maybe I feel like I always feel like I'm making it up or whatever, but I can't relate. So I can't relate to people that have it really bad, and I also can't relate to people that have like a normal good life because I just don't even know what that is. You know, like whenever I'm at a friend's house or whatever on a holiday or something, and like they have a bunch of family over, and their family is just like fun to be around, and they're like funny and like interesting, and like I just feel like kind of like weird and really uncomfortable in those situations because I've never been in those situations with my own family. And so I don't know. I don't really know what else to say. I just, I've always just felt
I've
very
got a question,
like.
Phil. How did you find this group?
I found out about Matt and Shane's podcast because they had Louis C.K. on, I'm a huge fan of. And then I listened to the podcast a lot, and then eventually saw the Dad Meet episode. And then I found out about this somehow through that.
Right on, man. That's how I found out about it too. And yeah, I mean, like we say this every week, but like, we know the core story of you producing your own game, which like we don't have to remind you that is a killer core story. And I'll never tire of hearing it, by the way. And you're not isolated today, man. You're like a very important part of this group. So I'm glad you're reversing that trend because when I'm isolated, I just do coke from 7 a.m. to midnight. And it's not as fun as it sounds, Wes. I hear you laughing. It's not as fun. It's not as fun as it sounds. I mean, the first day is fun. But day 1 million is pretty fucking miserable. And I've got a bunch of those core stories too.
Well, Phil, if you don't mind me asking, because I can super relate, like I land somewhere on the edge of like being resentful, let's say, that I didn't have a father around. Like I said, and honestly, I'm just becoming present to some of those emotions very recently. Of like, oh, maybe I did miss out on a decent amount of stuff, like I wish going down that whole road. On the other side of the pie, it's like, oh, look what I can then almost use that, and it's like, well, look what I can create, right? Like I almost have infinite motivation to recorrect some of that for whether it be my girlfriend's son or my family, etc. Do you have a similar like pie chart where like you toggle in between the two, or is it all like, is it anger? Is it anger and I'm going to make it better, or is it whatever, I'm numb to this? What is it for you, if you don't mind sharing, like the under the surface there?
It's almost entirely negative emotions. I mostly feel extremely angry and resentful and all that shit, but I don't even know if I don't really have any way to, I don't really know how to make any progress on my thinking about the rest of it. Like what if my positive, when I don't want my parents to die and then to realize that I should have dealt with this and had some relationship with them. But I don't even know what, I don't even know what having a relationship with my family means, because my family just don't care about it. They don't care about anything. My parents don't. It's not like they're calling me and I'm ignoring them. They don't care. They don't care about having a relationship in any meaningful way. They're just very checked out. They're very like just doing their own shit. My brother's also the same. My brother and I are technically having some kind of a fight right now, we're both mad at each other, but it's not even real, because it's like he doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't care. He's not like calling me or texting me. He texted me one time after I said, hey, we should go get some food. And then he texted me back and he's like, yeah, sure. And I haven't responded and he hasn't responded, because neither of us give a fuck, It's just it's not like it's not like there's a tension keeping us apart. The main thing keeping us apart is that neither of us give a shit about each other. And so I don't know. I don't even know what having a relationship would mean. Having a relationship to me with my family seems like it would mean me doing 90% of the work and never really getting much in return, because that's the way it is right now. I'm not expecting. I would have to expect them to change, for that to be different. So yeah, that's the way it would be. So I don't even know why I would do that or why I would want to do that.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me saying, man, I think like part of being a man, and let's say if I was pretending you were my brother, is and I was looking out for you, like number one is to like just be able to sit with you and like sit in the suck. You know what I mean? Like not wanting to change you or anybody else. Like, yeah, man, like it's tough, right? I like we can all only relate on a certain sliver, sort of thing. But I think it's important as men and just for relationships in general, like, hey, I don't have the answers. I can tell you what comes up for me. I don't have the answers, but what I can tell you for sure is I can sit here with you and we can sit in the suck together, and then eventually, hopefully, we come out of it. So that's the first thing I would say, if you don't mind me saying that. And then the other thing that I would say, again, if you don't mind, is like I'd be curious what would happen even if you just played along of like if I were to pay you $1 million of like what maybe is there one positive that could come out of it in the future? Like it builds you into the better man because like Donovan was saying, and I think what Logan was saying prior of like, what you don't want to be. You know what I mean? You know the culture you don't want to build in the future. Not that that's an answer. It was just curious if an exercise like that would be considered. Kaizen, what comes up for you? I know you have a lot of experience in this type of stuff and this type of discussion. As long as Phil doesn't mind, what comes up for you as Phil describing a story?
So a lot of like my core background story or whatever it is you want to call it comes from when I was in my early 20s, like 21, 22-ish around there. I had a girlfriend, and at that time I had a very needy type of mindset and behavior. I got real attached to this girl real quick, and it ended bad. She was trying to leave, and I had got drunk. She was mad that day, ended up in a big fight. Her sister called the cops, and I spent that Friday till Monday in jail because while during this breakup, I fell, being like a wuss, I jumped in the back of their truck and I tried to jump back through the window because she took off driving and it broke the glass. So I had to deal with this thing for a while through the courts. At that point, I went through it. I was still just kind of like a wimpy dude, and I'm trying to figure out like what was going on, what the relationship dynamics were, why was this kind of stuff happening. And then I started to get into being a 4chan weirdo at that time. Someone told me about like pickup artist stuff, and I'm reading about what they were talking about, and it's some of the stuff that I had experienced. I'm like, this makes sense. It's finally like some of the stuff is clicking in my head why certain things were happening in relationships that I was having. So I got real deep into studying this kind of stuff, and then I structured a lot of the stuff around my life to be like, all right, I'm gonna work a sales job that specifically forces me to have to go and interact with more people. So I build this socialization thing that I've kind of been neglecting. And for whatever reason, I didn't really get educated in growing up, and just try to get better at this thing that I learned about and see what happens. That resulted in me getting super obsessed with it, and I wanted to be a coach at it. And that resulted in me moving from my hometown to a bigger city to kind of practice this stuff. And then from there, moving out to Las Vegas. Las Vegas, I had something happen with a record. So when you Google my name, stuff would come up too. So when Arjuna was saying that, I really related to that, and just kind of the weirdness that comes with it, where you can work somewhere and you'll be working somewhere and people won't know anything about the kind of history or background that you have. And then once they find it out, they're kind of like, what's this about? And you have to kind of sheepishly like, yeah, this is something in the past that happened. I'm not like proud that happened. I'm not embarrassed about it anymore. I'll tell you whatever, but just kind of moving on from there. But the core of that was just trying to figure out what was making me do these behaviors that was landing me in trouble from my early 20s on, and then just taking everything that I could, learning as much as I could along the way to kind of like, all right, So I'm gonna just keep building on to this project and add tools to it until stuff starts to make sense, and just kind of use that to guide my decision making along the way. But I can see, especially like what Phil was touching on, like the family dynamics where you're feeling like you're putting in one way and you're not getting reciprocation or whatever. There's like, especially with, I've heard this said before, like your parents, it's their first time living life too, so you kind of have to be easy on them. They don't know what they're doing, and if you ever get to become a parent, you kind of really get to realize that, where you're like, oh shit, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. There's no way my parents knew what the fuck they were doing. I can't really like judge the kind of stuff that they did or be like mad because they're probably doing the best with what they had. So it's like all you can do is just try to put out the good stuff or good behaviors or good intentions, and then however people respond to it, it's like, all right. But like actually like that being your action, not like I'm intending to do something, but I'm actually doing like the action. If somebody from the outside sees it, what are they going to see? And like, what would somebody describe it as versus in your head, I'm doing this thing, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, like the thing is like, I totally feel that way. And, like I think maybe, I don't know, 6 months ago or something, I called my dad and I just said, I thanked him for he got sober when I was maybe like 10 years old or something. And, he's been sober ever since. And I thanked him for that because even though my childhood was, fucked up, it definitely probably would have been a lot worse if, I remember when I was really young, I remember being like really, really scared of my dad. Like I was too young to really remember exact stories, but I just remember feeling like my mom, they probably fought or something. And my mom would leave, like would go drive around cause she wanted to just leave the house or something. And I remember just being like really fucking scared, like being in my bedroom, like really, really scared that my dad would come back. Cause he was like, had like serious rage problems. So that, he always still had serious rage problems even after he got sober, but it definitely would have been worse. Maybe also he had his own business my whole life, so he maybe would have lost his business. Obviously our life would have been a lot worse. So, I don't know. It's just hard for me to like deal with or really like get anywhere with it in my head because like I do have a lot of empathy for them, but it doesn't change their behavior. Their behavior is constantly telling me that they don't give a fuck about me at all. Basically, that's their like that's just the truth. I think is they just don't really care about anyone other than themselves. They're just very selfish. They're just kind of the stereotypical boomers. They're just living their own life and they're just kind of checked out. And it's hard to not resent that.
And Phil, I don't know if you see Donovan's question, but he said in the comments saying, "Hey Phil, hope it's okay if I ask you this. Do you feel shame when you think about your relationship with your family in comparison to your friends that you were talking about?"
Yeah. I mean, I feel extremely ashamed because, like, for example, like my parents are not like civilized people. Like my dad, like, is a fucking like lunatic. Like, whenever we're out in public, it's like extremely embarrassing. Like just the way that he acts he just acts psychotic. And whenever I'm like, if I'm haven't in a long time been at like a social event with my parents, but when I was like, I remember one of my cousins got married when I was like 18 or 20 or something like that, and just seeing the way my dad interacts with people is just fucking crazy, man. He just like is the kind of guy who will just corner someone and like talk to them for like an hour. Like he just ignores all social signals just keeps talking and talking. It's like, I don't know. He's just fucking weird, man. He's like, yeah. He's just like, I don't know that's the thing too. The thing that really bothers me about thinking about my dad is like, I don't know what's wrong with him. Like, I don't think he has like some kind of mental illness. He's not like that fucked up. He's not like fucked up in a way that's like, I don't know what's wrong with him. Like he just, some reason, is like kind of checked out in ways. It's just, I don't know, it's very confusing. I don't know how to even explain it.
Well, because I don't want to glaze over this part either. Like, Kaizen, number one, thank you for sharing your core story. Like, because like you got to the point of like, you know, commenting on Phil's, but I want to say I appreciate you sharing yours, because very similar. Like, I hear a piece of Kaizen story of like, hey, some of these social dynamic things run so deep, and Kaizen just summarized it like, for whatever reason, I just wasn't good at this particular thing. Well, you have to go on a whole freaking journey. Like, you've got to be willing to put years into like dedicated focus of adjusting some of those like microcosmic social dynamic interactions that are, first of all, flying under the radar. They don't even know them. Once they're on your radar, it's almost impossible to correct them. I mean, Kaizen, correct me if I'm wrong, but like how do you teach humor? How do you teach when to pause in a conversation to let the other person talk? Like, all of these things. So Phil, to give credit to you, you are on that journey of like, hey, probably reasonable to assume that your parents didn't teach you a lot of that stuff. It's obvious that they never learned it. But I'm curious if like you're the one that has to carry the torch now of adjusting that, because if they're just not interested or even aware of like they've got those social gaps, I mean, you know, I don't know, man, that's what comes up for me. What's your response to that, bud?
I think even though, you know, I feel like I would really like to learn and to improve. I feel like I'm never going to do it, because I'm not even anywhere near being able to confront that kind of stuff. Like,
you're on the journey, man.
I don't know, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I've been relearning math recently, like just starting at fucking basic ass math, because I slept through all of math in school. Found this cool app that teaches you like step by step, like all the way through different types of math and shit. And it's embarrassing learning geometry being 33 years old, but it's not that bad, because it's like a very concrete thing, you know, that at least like I learned this exact thing, and then I understand that, and it's like it gives you a little quiz question, so you make sure you understand that. And socializing is like, there's not a fucking app for that shit, you know. And I need a fucking, like, if it were that like baby mode where I could be a little like baby in my room where I'm safe and learn steps and shit, I could maybe start to. But it's just, I don't know, it's just so painful to have to confront how. Just how like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, Wes, I know that you can relate to that, dude, because like just from knowing you low these past 3 or 4 years, I know that you are on a similar journey, right? Where navigating the middle and upper echelons of society was completely foreign to you. And that's something that you had to learn on the job and practice and still need to practice, right? Or it's something that you still do practice. And so I'm sure you can see similarities in Phil's story, or you can relate to Phil's story.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, one of the things, Phil, that I admire about you most, and I don't want to keep on putting you, on stage here, so we can kind of wrap up with this. But one of the things that I admire about Phil the most is that he continuously talks about himself not chopping the wood while he's actually doing it. So, hey, I'm not, I don't do the work. I don't do any of this self-exploration. While he's creating his video game, while he's showing up here and teaching people about his journey, and they're learning their own, they're learning skills from him.
Creating value for us.
100%. And I know he's not going to want to accept that. And I, by the way, I can respect that as well. But that is the reality. Like, that is the objective truth, is that he shows up here every single week, multiple times a week, and shares and is making progress. While the verbal description of that is, hey, I'm not making any progress at all. But I think we all know that to not be true. And that is not a general, like, stereotypical answer of like, oh, that's what Wes is supposed to say. That's not true at all. But like, this is objectively true. Everybody can go and review the tapes, right, of how much progress, Yeah, exactly. I would also be curious if Kaizen, this is not to put you on the spot of like signing you up for any worker, but I'd be really curious what would happen if Kaizen and Phil had a conversation offline at some point. Maybe they already have, of like, you know, learning how to socialize is a very learnable thing. It's
It's
just
a soft skill.
a very, yeah, 100%, and but it's a very deep curriculum. Kaizen already have gone through that journey. You know, I'd be curious if you could recommend any books or resources to Phil, maybe offline, because I know that I've benefited from those. Like
Charisma
really
on Command comes to mind.
100%. You know. So anyway, I'm gonna jump off. I actually have 7 or 8 family members downstairs, which I feel very grateful and blessed for right now. I don't want to keep on pushing them off. But anyway, dudes, I sincerely love you guys. Thank you so much. Kaizen, it was awesome seeing you again, bro. Super glad you're able to take the time to get back on here. Donovan, thank you again for the compliment. Thank you for hopping on here. Arjuna, Ray, everybody, love you guys. Have an awesome weekend. I'll see you guys on Monday. Later.
Phil, you're the man.